This is BBC News. Welcome if you're watching here in the UK or around the globe. I'm Lucy Hockings. Our top stories. Russian and Ukrainian delegates have begun talks on how to end the fighting. Expectations are low. Ukraine's president says the next 24 hours will be crucial as his forces fight the Russian invasion.
Our people are fighting for the whole of Europe, as well as for all of us, for peace for everyone, for all countries of the European Union.
The UN say 102 civilians have been killed, including 7 children, as Ukraine faces more clashes with Russian forces. Blasts have been heard again in Kiev in the early hours. With sanctions beginning to bite, the Russian ruble falls to an all-time low as interest rates are hiked. And the Kremlin says President Putin's nuclear alert was a response to a statement made by the British Foreign Secretary after comments on possible conflict situations.
Western countries are not only taking unfriendly steps against our country in the economic dimension, but the top officials of leading NATO countries also make aggressive statements with regards to our country.
Delegates from Ukraine and Russia have sat down for talks for the first time since the invasion started last week. They gathered in southeastern Belarus near the border with Ukraine on Monday. The Ukrainian side is urging an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of Russia's military. The Russian delegation is demanding what it calls demilitarization of Ukraine and a guarantee it'll remain neutral. Moscow apparently wants legal assurance that Ukraine won't join NATO. Russian ground troops are closing in on the capital Kyiv and Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Ukraine's military is putting up strong resistance. A local governor said on social media that the Russians had been driven away. This footage was shot in Bucha, a city some 20 kilometers northwest of the capital. The city's mayor posted a video on social media.
This was all caused by the Russian invasion. Our troops fought well. Glory be to Ukraine.
The mayor said Ukrainians will not forgive their enemies and will rebuild all that's been destroyed. Children are among the victims. A 6-year-old girl was rushed to a hospital after being severely wounded in Russian shelling.
President Putin should look at the girl's eyes and see the grief of her parents.
The hospital staff was not able to save her. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that 16 children were killed and 45 wounded during the first 4 days of the invasion. Railway stations are packed with people trying to flee Ukraine, most of them women and children. Ukrainian men aged between 18 and 60 are not allowed to leave so they can help with the country's defense. The leaders of Japan and Ukraine talked by phone on Monday. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio told Zelensky that Japan will restrict transactions with Russia's central bank as an additional sanction on Moscow.
I told the president that Japan stands by Ukraine and conveyed my heartfelt condolences for the victims of Russian aggression. I also conveyed our firm support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The government is also considering sanctions against senior officials of Belarus, citing the country's support for Russia's military action. People across the world have taken to the streets to protest the invasion. Russian citizens are also holding demonstrations despite crackdowns by police. People in Asian countries have also been reacting. In the Thai capital, dozens of protesters rallied to demand the immediate withdrawal of Russian forces. The protesters, including Ukrainians and Russians, as well as Thais, marched on Sunday in central Bangkok. Carrying Ukrainian flags, they called on Moscow to stop the violence immediately. Similar demonstrations were held on Monday, too. Meanwhile, foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations expressed deep concern over the situation in Ukraine. In a joint statement issued on Saturday, the bloc urged all relevant parties to exercise restraint and de-escalate tensions. Separately, some member countries had harsher things to say. On Monday, Singaporean Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan said his country plans to slap sanctions on Russia. He said they will include export controls on items that could be weaponized for use in Ukraine and blocking certain Russian banks and financial transactions linked to Russia. Toyota will suspend operations at all its factories in Japan on Tuesday. Sources say the shutdown follows a cyber attack on one of the automaker's major business partners. Toyota announced on Monday that it decided to keep all 14 of its factories shut down on Tuesday. The company explained that there is a system failure at one of its business partners. Toyota says it's not clear whether the firm can resume operations from Wednesday, but that it'll do its best to restart as soon as possible. Hino Motors, a group company of Toyota, also announced that it'll suspend operations at 2 of its 4 plants in Japan because they were affected by a business partner's system failure, just like Toyota. The company says that it has yet to decide whether to restart operations from Wednesday. Prime Minister Kishida Fumio told reporters that the government is trying to confirm the source of the system failures. Asked by reporters whether the latest cyber attack is related to Russia and other countries, he said that it's difficult to answer unless it is thoroughly confirmed. The Philippine presidential race is in full swing for the election scheduled in May. Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the son of the former dictator, appears to be way ahead, polling at 60% among the top 4 candidates. What's behind his popularity? NHK World's Yamaguchi Masashi reports.
Hello everyone, how are you?
When small business owner J.R. Panday isn't working, he's drumming up support for Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Panday believes a presidential candidate can save the Philippines from corruption and poverty. On his days off, he films Marcos Jr.'s rallies and posts them on social media.
I've learned that former President Ferdinand Marcos was a competent leader, not a thief or a dictator. His son has experience and ability.
The campaign of Marcos Jr. has been using social media to boost his popularity. In videos, he taught what he says are his father's achievements, such as economic growth.
Most proud about your dad? I'm most proud about my dad for bringing a sense of nationhood to the Philippines.
Many people say my father's era was the golden age of infrastructure development.
Without mentioning the corruption and human rights violations associated with his father's regime, Marcos Jr. is trying to show he can fight poverty. It's an appeal to young people who didn't experience life under the dictator. But the message also resonates with older voters like Cyril de Guzman. He signals his support for Marcos Jr. with red shirts and asks neighbors to join him. De Guzman is in his 50s and knows how life was during the dictatorship. At the time, he didn't have a regular job, hoping for a better future. He joined protests that helped force Marcos out. Now, more than 35 years later, de Guzman is still struggling. He says he has no money to send his children to school. After seeing Marcos Jr. lay out his father's achievements, Degsman felt the candidate could bring change.
I don't want my grandchildren to experience what I have been through. I have high hopes for Marcos Jr., and I believe he will bring back the good aspects of his father's era.
Marcos Jr.'s election strategy may be working, but he has not revealed specific policies. It remains to be seen if he could produce the same success as a leader. Yamaguchi Masashi, NHK World, Manila.
Now to the coronavirus situation here in Japan, where 31 prefectures are under quasi-emergency measures. The restrictions are set to expire on Sunday, but Osaka's governor has asked the central government for an extension.
The case numbers are declining a little, but the hospital bed occupancy rate remains very severe.
The government plans to closely monitor changes in the number of infections and the medical care system. It also plans to decide how to deal with the measures while listening to the opinions of local governments. Japanese officials expect to see progress in the rollout of booster shots. The government says 19.3% of the population has gotten a third dose. Tokyo is currently subject to the quasi-emergency measures. More than 9,000 cases were reported on Monday, up 800 from a week ago. The hospital bed occupancy rate is 53%. More than 51,000 infections were confirmed nationwide. The total number of cases in Japan has surpassed 5 million. The Japanese government is set to ease some of its coronavirus border controls on Tuesday. Schools and companies are getting ready to see an influx of foreign arrivals. Colleges, businesses, and other organizations have started registering with the Health Ministry for the new entries. That includes providing details of where they'll self-isolate after they arrive in Japan. At this Japanese language school in Tokyo, 731 foreign students are preparing to enter the country. Some have been waiting as long as 2 years. The students have been attending classes online. Some had to take classes late at night because of the time difference.
I've had to stay home for 6 months. I want to come to Japan as soon as possible.
Japan's daily cap on foreign arrivals will be raised to 5,000 from the current 3,500. People are concerned the limit may affect their ability to book plane tickets. The government says it'll consider easing the restrictions further depending on the coronavirus situation. It looks like spring is arriving as temperatures are starting to warm up in Japan. Our meteorologist Saiko Mori has the details in World Weather.
Hello there. It's finally warming up in Japan after a long spell of cold and snowy weather in the country. On Sunday, Tokyo's high rose to about 19 degrees, making it more like April. It was the warmest temperature of the year so far. Itoigawa in Niigata Prefecture had 11.5 degrees Celsius on Monday. That's the highest of the season. This area was hit by a deadly avalanche last week. Warm conditions could lead to more avalanches. Meanwhile, rain and thunderstorms expected to pound western Japan, especially along the Pacific side, and snowy weather should return in northern Japan later this week. Niigata 12 degrees on Tuesday. Be careful of more avalanches. Tokyo could still have 18 degrees. Warmer weather is likely with cloudy conditions on Tuesday. Heavy rain has been pounding eastern Australia. Brisbane had 741 millimeters of rain from Monday to Thursday. Take a look at this video coming out of Brisbane. The severe storm system caused floods in Brisbane over the weekend. At least 8 people have been killed due to the flooding. Over 1,000 people have been evacuated across Queensland, and tens of thousands of homes were without power over the weekend. Some popular beaches like the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast have been closed. Brisbane will see conditions drying up. However, heavy rain will pound New South Wales, including Sydney, where this area has been dealing with the wettest summer in 3 decades. Sydney could see heavy rainfall at least for the next couple of days. The opposite side of Australia is bracing for another cyclone. The system will likely make landfall on the coast of Western Australia on Thursday as a Category 3 storm system. That's it for me. Stay safe.
We do begin with Russia's war on Ukraine and a dramatic escalation of tensions. Vladimir Putin setting his nuclear forces on high alert as anger rises around the world. Hundreds of thousands protesting from Berlin to New York to Tel Aviv and Madrid.
More than 500,000 Ukrainians have fled their homes, crossing the border into Poland, Hungary, and Romania. As we come on the air, Ukrainian and Russian officials are meeting to discuss a possible ceasefire. Our team covering all the latest developments from across the globe, senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell starts us off in Kyiv. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, George. That's right. Russia adding yet more forces to its invading army, but also facing hardening resistance across the country. And, you know, I don't think I've seen anything quite like the mood in Ukraine right now. They said that they defend their land, but this is now an entire nation leading into the war efforts. And with the number of civilian casualties rising, it's now clear that Russia's claim that it's only targeting the military is untrue. Day 5 of the Russian invasion, but Ukraine standing strong. And this morning, President Zelensky addressing the nation, claiming thousands of Russian troops have been killed, saying Ukrainians have shown who we are. Russia has shown what it has become. This morning, potential peace talks as a Ukrainian delegation meets with Russian officials on the Belarus-Ukraine border. While Zelensky says it's likely they'll fail, he wants his people to know he'll always try for peace, even if there's little chance. According to the president, so far the fighting's taken the lives of 352 civilians, 16 of them children. The Ukrainian military mounting a fierce defense against more powerful invading Russian forces. The government releasing this drone video claiming they've hit a Russian military unit to the west of Kyiv. And these videos posted to social media show the clashes in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Government troops seen here battling on the streets with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. The Ukrainian government releasing these images, claiming to show Russian forces entering the city, then apparently being defeated. Government troops seen picking through the wreckage. But the Russian military continuing to bombard the city. One US defense official praising the Ukrainian resistance, saying they've been quite creative in finding ways to attack columns. Now Vladimir Putin appearing to raise the stakes higher, ordering his strategic nuclear defense forces onto heightened alert, claiming it's in response to so-called aggressive statements from NATO.
This is actually the most convincing sign we've seen yet that the war in Ukraine is not going according to plan. This is not a step that you take when you're winning a major conventional war.
But it may still be early days in this invasion. Satellite photos show a massive Russian military convoy headed in the direction of Kyiv, stretching over 3 miles long. With fears these troops could enter the city at any moment, many residents now taking up arms. We went to a weapons distribution centre in Kyiv. What we're seeing today are civilians taking up arms to try and defend their city of Kyiv. Let's just follow them a second. We're seeing people with anti-tank weapons, Kalashnikovs, are getting them from the police station. And these are men, some of them in their 50s, some just out of their teens, ready to stand and fight and defend. Ukrainian citizens are showing resistance around the country. In Berdyansk, which is occupied by Russian forces, locals came out facing a Russian tank, singing the Ukrainian national anthem. Well, remarkable scenes. President Zelensky, interestingly, now creating this international brigade for people, volunteers who want to come from overseas and fight together with the Ukrainians. And this morning, even releasing prisoners with combat experience who are willing to go to the front lines and fight. But I think after 5 days of Russian attacks and this invasion advancing, there is a real sense and a concern this morning that the worst is still yet to come. George.
You know, Russia has so much firepower. Okay, and thanks. And our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega. Cecilia, we saw that announcement from Vladimir Putin ramping up the readiness of his nuclear forces. The White House trying to downplay it.
Yeah, George, exactly. Good morning to you. The White House really trying to dial down some of this rhetoric they're hearing. They say these words from Putin were escalatory and unnecessary. But right now, what we are seeing from this White House and the Western allies, they are really ramping up the pressure on Moscow in recent days. They're responding directly to those Ukrainian pleas for more weapons to fend off those Russian planes and helicopters. The White House approving that more than $350 million defense package. This now includes that first batch of surface-to-air missiles that the Ukrainians had been asking. And this is big. Germany also reversing its historic policy to not send lethal aid to conflict zones. It's now going to send those weapons to Ukraine. We are also seeing, George, what could be the strictest sanctions ever levied in modern history from these Western nations and the White House. They're going after rich Russians, freezing their assets, targeting their yachts, their mansions, their luxury apartments. They're even trying to go after their ability to send their children to fancy schools here in the West. And on those sanctions, they are now cutting Russia off from that SWIFT banking system. This is important because it allows that's the system that helps large banks transfer money internationally. And this could really hurt Russia's ability to do much of its business beyond its borders. But the big ones going after Russia's central bank. This is targeting that some $600 billion in rainy day funds that Russia had set aside to sanction-proof its economy. So, George, really what we're seeing right now, they are going after the oligarchs. They're going after Putin himself. And a lot of these moves could end up hurting the Russian economy in general, and that's going to have Putin facing political backlash at home, George.
Yeah, the Western response really accelerated over the weekend. Okay, Cecilia, thanks.
Let's go to our foreign correspondent, James Longman, who is inside Moscow. And James, sanctions already, as we heard, starting to have an impact there. Good morning.
Yeah, that's right, Amy. Good morning. Russia is becoming increasingly isolated. The entire European Union has now banned Russian aircraft from its airspace. A number of airlines have suspended services entirely. And that is why the United States has told all American citizens to leave here immediately. And the economic fallout from sanctions, it is really hitting. The stock market is now closed because they feared a crash. Interest rates have now been hiked to deal with the plummeting ruble. People's incomes are now worth far less this afternoon than just when they woke up a few hours ago. We've seen big lines at banks as people try to store dollars. But there are concerns ATMs will actually run out of foreign currency. Some major electronics retailers have actually stopped selling things like smartphones and laptops because so many people rushed to buy them before they became too expensive. UPS and FedEx have suspended services to Russia, and this is hugely consequential. Energy giant BP has divested from its 20% share of the huge oil company here, Rosneft. Now, authorities have always kept a close eye on people, but Moscow really does feel more and more like the capital of a police state. Riot police have flooded the center of town following days of protests across the country. More than 5,000 have now been arrested in anti-war protests. Amy?
And James, as Putin's military efforts are challenged in Ukraine, the battle online is also heating up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Amy. Facebook says it's uncovered 2 social media disinformation campaigns targeted at Ukraine. Now, one ran websites posing as genuine news entities. They created fake personas using things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The other was what they called a threat actor who invented scenarios showing Ukrainian troops surrendering. More Russian tactics just being foiled. Amy?
James Longman in Moscow, thank you. To heartbreaking scenes at Ukraine's border crossing. Let's go to our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, in Lviv, Ukraine. And Matt, the UN now says more than 500,000 people have fled Ukraine to neighboring countries, and I know you've been among them.
This is the nexus of that exodus right now, the very hub. You're seeing people right now board this train on track 5 in the station in Lviv to Poland. This train just pulled into the station. I want you to see what's still waiting in store. These people have been waiting in this tunnel to climb up the stairs for hours, almost all of them women and children, desperate to get out of Ukraine.
This morning, the escape from Ukraine is going nowhere. Thousands packed into this tunnel beneath the Lviv railway station in western Ukraine. Closer to the Polish border and to safety, refugees dragging what they could, whipped by wind and snow. Traffic snarled for over 15 miles. The UN telling us at least 422,000 people have fled the violence so far. In the thick air of that train station, babies screaming, adults shouting. And a railway spokesperson telling us that every hour, 5,000 to 10,000 more people arrive.
And this is absolute chaos.
There is no scheduled train. There is no information about some clear train.
So,
So
Juliana,
they just in line for some possible, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, maybe in 2 days.
In the meantime, they wait, young and old scurrying over the tracks, clutching hands. Ukrainian men of fighting age are banned from leaving the country, which is why Marina was on the platform preparing to part from her husband Sergei.
Nothing can scare me more.
nothing can scare you more than what's already happening.
No.
Every few minutes, the crowd would rise and bolt. A train and another false alarm. This train is going to Kyiv.
Only women and child.
Caught in limbo, African and Middle Eastern immigrants, these men telling us they believe they've been discriminated against, waiting for their turn to board a train since Friday, and their turn hasn't come.
They treat us at times like trash. You understand? And they look at you with your color, they judge you.
And everywhere, those goodbyes. This mother smoothing her son's jacket, weeping through her mask, unsure when or if she'd see her son again.
Now, yesterday there were thousands of people on the tracks here. There was trash, but now they have gotten this organized. There are volunteers, English speakers, military, police. All the more remarkable given that this is likely the largest number of displaced people in Europe in the shortest amount of time since World War II. George.
Matt Gutman, thanks. Let's bring in our military analyst, Steve Ganyard, for more on all this. Right now, Steve, it's pretty clear that the Ukrainian resistance is more than the Russians expected. But is this just a matter of time? The Russian military is so large.
The Ukrainians are doing an amazing job, George. You know, it reminds me a bit of the American Revolution, where you have a standing army, but then you have these militias that are providing great support as well. But I think what's most noticeable here is that the Russian military seems incompetent. It's shocking how bad they are. They aren't able to execute the very basics at the tactical or operational level. So this may lead to some desperation. You know, does Putin do what he did in, say, Grozny and Aleppo, where he just begins to shell indiscriminately? And it's probably one of the things we need to watch today with that negotiation going on up at the border. If it doesn't go well, or if there isn't immediate progress, then Putin may use that as an excuse to come back and say, the Ukrainians are stonewalling us, we need to go in with more firepower.
How about putting the nuclear forces on alert? As echoes of the Cold War, the White House trying to downplay it. But what is the practical impact? What is the danger?
Well, lots of danger with nuclear weapons, George, because they escalate very quickly. You know, it's interesting. This is the first time that either Russia or the U.S. has escalated, raised the nuclear awareness level since 1940, in 48 years, which was the Yom Kippur War. And so what this really shows here is that Mr. Putin is becoming even more desperate. It's showing that his military progress is failing on the ground, that he has to resort to this kind of threat. But he has threatened us in the past. We should probably take him seriously.
You say desperate. A lot of close observers of Russia and Putin are suggesting now that he's in some way mentally unbalanced, not acting rationally?
Well, he's acting rationally according to his own calculus. What's most concerning, though, is that he is pushing his inner circle away. We saw him publicly humiliating his closest advisors the other day. So as these missteps add up, military slowed down, not doing well, huge economic pressure, isolating from his closest advisor, that's what's most concerning. Nobody there to prevent a catastrophic misstep.
Ominous. Okay, Steve Ganyard, thanks very much.
At this tumultuous time around the world, President Biden is set to deliver his first State of the Union address tomorrow. Our senior White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, joins us with what we can expect from him. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Amy. Well, there certainly is no question the crisis in Ukraine is going to loom large over this speech here tomorrow night. The president, we are told, is likely going to highlight the steps he's taken to fight back against Putin's invasion and to support the Ukrainian people. He's also likely to tout the united response that we have seen from the West. But the president is also going to have to tackle the many challenges here at home, everything from inflation to rising gas prices and the pandemic. The president's also likely to try and hit on his big agenda items, much of which, as you know, remains stalled here on the Hill. I think the big picture, the president is going into this speech in a very difficult position. Our latest poll shows he has just a 37% approval rating. That is the lowest point of his presidency. Now, here on the Hill, I can tell you they are already beefing up security for this amid some concerns that a truck convoy may try to disrupt the night. They've already put back up that big temporary fencing around the Capitol, and the Pentagon has authorized up to 700 members of the National Guard. Amy, they are taking no chances.
All right, Mary Bruce there on the Hill for us. Thank you. And you can see President Biden's State of the Union address right here on ABC Tuesday night at 9 Eastern.
We're going to take a closer look now at the courageous leader of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He's just 44, a comedian who came to fame in his country by playing a president on TV. Now he's leading the nation through the largest battle in Europe since World War II. Martha Raddatz has just returned from Ukraine. She joins us from Washington with the story. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. It has been a remarkable transformation to watch. A young leader with little foreign policy experience not only rising to face off with Vladimir Putin, but leading the way.
He has become the unexpected face of Ukrainian resistance, with Russian troops advancing, with his own life in danger, rallying his people, standing strong. The 44-year-old Volodymyr Zelensky sending messages of defiance across social media, from the seat of government to the streets of Kyiv, saying, "We are here, we are defending Ukraine."
Я тут, ніяку зброю ми не складемо. Будемо захищати нашу державу.
Turning down an offer from the White House to evacuate, saying, "The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride."
I think the fact that Zelensky's made himself relatable and the fact that he's stood by his people literally on the front line, that has given him credibility.
Zelensky's path to the presidency, unorthodox to say the least. The trained attorney showing his skills on the dance floor in 2006, winning Ukraine's version of Dancing with the Stars. And voicing beloved characters, like Ukraine's edition of Paddington. Zelensky created, produced, and starred in the 2015 Ukrainian satirical series Servant of the People, playing the role of an enthusiastic and outspoken school teacher turned president. In 2018, Zelensky pivoting from entertainment to politics, announcing his candidacy for president of Ukraine. Taking office a year later with more than 73% of the vote and becoming known to many Americans after transcripts were released from a 2019 call then President Trump made to Zelensky, seemingly asking for a favor in return for military aid, a favor that was never delivered, a call that was at the heart of Trump's impeachment. But the stakes today are life and death. Putin demanding for what he calls the denazification of the country, a phrase that has a somber meaning for Zelensky. Zelensky is Jewish, his grandfather the only one of 4 brothers to survive the Holocaust. Zelensky now pushing back on Putin's inflammatory statements.
This is, of course, a long way from over, but for the people of Ukraine and people around the world, Zelensky has truly been an inspiration. George?
He certainly has. And Martha, you were in Lviv last week. Quite the journey home.
Really quite a journey. I think people forget there are no airplanes flying in and out of Ukraine right now other than warplanes. So we drove down to the border of Slovakia and basically joined those refugees and displaced people trying to just walk across the border. It was really quite a journey. It took a long time, but we are, of course, the lucky ones. So many people stuck in that country and desperate to get out, George.
No question about that. Okay, Martha Raddatz, thanks.
Now to a major development in the battle against COVID. New York lifting its mask mandate for schools statewide. New York City's mayor saying he expects to follow suit for the largest school district in the country. Ariel Reshef joins us now with the latest on all of that. Good morning to you, Ariel.
Good morning to you, Amy. Of course, New York was once the epicenter of this COVID-19 pandemic, but now Governor Kathy Hochul says that new cases have dropped 98% and pediatric hospitalizations have dropped 80% since the peak of the Omicron surge. She says in light of that and her conversations with teachers and school officials, as well as that new CDC guidance out on Friday, she has decided to lift the school mask mandate statewide by this Wednesday, effective this Wednesday. But of course, the decision about New York City Public Schools, the largest school district in the country, is up to Mayor Adams. He says unless there's an unforeseen spike in cases, he plans to lift the mask mandate for schools by March 7th. We are expecting that decision to come by Friday. Connecticut and Massachusetts have their school mask mandates expire today. Amy.
All right, Ariel Reshef, thank you very much. We are back now with our GMA cover story as the world watches the urgent situation in Ukraine unfold. This morning, we're taking a closer look at the women of the war who dropped everything to defend their country. Ariel Reshef is back with that. Good morning, Ariel.
Good morning again, Amy. Though they are not required to fight, women of Ukraine have become a formidable force in the resistance against Russia, many stepping up to protect the country and the people they love. They are Ukraine's mothers, daughters, teachers, politicians, beauty queens, now on the front lines defending their country under siege.
When Russia declared war on us, on Ukraine, and this is when I decided to arm myself. And this is when I got my Kalashnikov. And for the last 5 days, I spent trying to learn to use it.
Ukrainian parliament member Kira Rudik going viral for her post bearing arms, preparing for the raids in Kyiv.
We've given away like 20,000 Kalashnikovs, and mine is one of them.
Men are required by martial law to stay back and fight the Russian invasion, but many women are foregoing the chance to leave.
I was helping my husband to pack for a war, you know, like T-shirts, underwear, weapons. And then I thought, okay, he's going to war. I'm going too. So we are here together.
And there is Anastasia Lena, a former Miss Grand Ukraine. Photos of her on Instagram in fatigues, rifle in hand. Underneath, patriotic hashtags. One video in her story with the caption, "Training, the invaders will die on our land. All world, see this." Alina Misker remaining in the outskirts of the capital Kyiv, needing provisions for citizens and soldiers alike. Talking with us from her darkened home, lights off for safety.
We decided to bake bread for our soldiers, so we bake it for free. In case we are needed, we shall help.
Women of Ukraine hoping that, like them, the world will take notice and take action.
We will now have a generation of children who know what war is, who will know to go down to the bomb shelter after when the siren is alarmed. This is what makes me very angry, and this is what empowers me.
And that lawmaker telling us that despite years of tensions with Russia, she never imagined that war would literally land at her doorstep, George. But she says once it did, there was no option but to serve.
Such courage right there. Okay, Ariel, thanks very much. We're going to turn now to Amanda Bynes. She's filed to end her conservatorship after nearly 9 years. Of course, it follows Britney Spears ending her own long conservatorship. Kaylee Hartung is in Los Angeles with the story. Good morning, Kaylee.
Yeah, good morning, George. Britney Spears' case undoubtedly shined new light on the nature of conservatorships. And now Amanda Bynes, another star of the 2000s, is ready to take control in the next chapter of her life.
The What a Girl Wants star, Amanda Bynes, now wants to terminate her nearly 9-year conservatorship.
I imagine something a little more graceful.
Bynes' mother was granted control over her life in 2013 after she allegedly started a small fire in a stranger's driveway and was hospitalized on an involuntary psychiatric hold. Prior to that, the former Nickelodeon star was involved in a series of run-ins with the law for both DUI and possession of drugs. But now the actress's attorney says protection of the court is no longer necessary.
She has a doctor's declaration that indicates that she is able to manage her own financial affairs, that she's able to live independently. She has been working hard in school for the last several years, earning almost straight A's. She's ready to live free of this conservatorship.
Bynes has been out of the spotlight for more than a decade. Her last big screen role in 2010's Easy A.
What will people say?
Her mother's attorney telling GMA that she could not be more proud of Amanda for the progress she has made and the healthy and safe life she has created for herself.
Her family have been with her on this journey since the beginning, and they fully support her.
This petition coming just 3 months after pop superstar Britney Spears successfully ended her 13-year conservatorship. Experts say, in addition to her family's support, there are key differences that might signal an easier road for Bynes.
I think Amanda Bynes has a very good chance of winning her petition to terminate her conservatorship. She hasn't been making the kind of money that Britney Spears was making, where there was all sorts of reasons for people to keep her in the conservatorship so they could keep the money flowing.
And Amanda's attorney explains that unlike Britney, Amanda's individual rights and freedoms were never taken away. She's been able to go to a yoga class, walk on the beach, get a cup of coffee at will. They say this move for her is about taking away the stigma of what it means to be conserved. George.
Kaylee Hartung, thanks.
Now, with the SAG Awards back live in person this year and shaking up the race for the Oscars, Chris Connolly is in Los Angeles with all of the highlights. Good morning, Chris.
And good morning, Amy. Yeah, some genuine surprises last night as the SAG Awards passed out their prizes, setting the stage for a harder-to-predict Oscars than usual, and notably favoring crowd pleasers among its delighted recipients.
All right, and the actor goes to Coda.
With the feel-good Coda winning for Best Motion Picture Cast, alongside deaf actor Troy Kotzer's historic supporting male actor triumph. Sunday night SAG Awards giving a serious shakeup to next month's Oscar races.
I'm going to teach you one thing. Do this. This is I love you.
Plenty of love in this room. After months of pandemic separation at movie award shows, the SAGs setting it off with a full house gather.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see so many of you in person. It's been so long.
The night leaning into audience-pleasing productions and performances.
And the actor goes to Will Smith.
The 52-year-old overjoyed by more than his male lead actor SAG.
You're going to be the greatest of all time.
For portraying tennis patriarch Richard Williams, father of Serena and Venus.
One of the greatest moments of my career just now, because my name was called for King Richard sitting next to Venus Williams.
Winning for female lead actor, and now positioned as an Academy Award frontrunner in what's been a wide-open category, Jessica Chastain. Bringing the life of the televangelist to the movies with the eyes of Tammy Faye.
It was a dream of mine to play Tammy Faye. She was a real trailblazer. So nervous.
West Side Story's only nominee Ariana DeBose, a winner for her performance as Anita.
The Anita that we see on the screen took every bit of me, but she took 10 years to make, and I'm extremely proud of her.
And with a Lifetime Achievement Award for Dame Helen Mirren.
I suppose I'm still alive, so by that measure, I'm eligible.
There were several acknowledgments and calls for support for Ukraine.
Sending our thoughts, prayers, and hopes for impending peace.
In the TV field, Succession taking home a top cast honor. From overseas, the cast of Ted Lasso enjoying their two SAGs. And
Michael Keaton. Are you kidding me? I have stage fright.
Michael Keaton nearly missing his award for Dope Sick.
Sorry, quick trip to the men's room.
And Squid Game, making the transition from international popularity to award show success. The Korean drama winning 3 SAGs on the night, including male actor for Lee Jung-jae. And for female actor, an exuberant Jung Ho-young, victorious in her first role ever.
And I love you, my Squid Game girl.
And the much-beloved Jean Smart also winning for Hacks. On the film side, not always a reliable roadmap when it comes to the Oscars. The SAG going their own way last year in 3 of its movie awards, but it certainly adds intrigue to the days ahead. Guys?
It sure does. Thank you, Chris. We're going to continue our Black History Month celebration with the first look at the new History Channel series that I'm executive producing called I Was There. It focuses on some of the most pivotal moments in history, including Bloody Sunday, which was a turning point in the civil rights movement. Will Reeve here with the story. Good morning, Will.
Hey, good morning, George. So great to see you putting your executive producer hat on top of that fantastic head of hair. And we are really excited for this show. We're going to dive into these crucial moments in I Was There. It'll help us use our history to inform the present and prepare for the future.
It's a trip back in time. You have to see it to believe it. History Channel's I Was There, executive produced by George Stephanopoulos, takes us behind the scenes of some of history's biggest events, from the Battle of Stalingrad to the Chernobyl accident, to deconstruct how they truly unfolded.
The biggest aircraft
ever, the Hindenburg.
Host Theo E.J. Wilson travels to the scene with CGI technology, archival material, and expert testimony, helping bring to life the dramatic recreations. In this episode, we're transported to the events of March 7th, 1965, known as Bloody Sunday, when civil rights activist John Lewis led 600 people across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, demonstrating for voting rights, until they were brutally attacked.
John Lewis was the toughest person I've ever interviewed. He was literally willing to put his body on the line to fight for this cause he believed in so deeply.
State troopers violently attacking the peaceful demonstrators, including John Lewis.
Dozens of peaceful protesters are beaten and injured for daring to demand their constitutional rights.
And then to add insult to injury, people are on the ground bleeding, injured, and they were denied medical care on the scene because colored folk didn't go to white hospitals.
Meanwhile, in New York, executives at ABC News make a crucial decision to cut into regular programming to run the local footage from Selma.
That decision shows how significant it was and how, in real time, people recognized that this was different, that the world had to see this as soon as possible.
So many moving parts, so fascinating. That CGI really puts Wilson inside these moments. The innovative concept, George, we are so excited to see that. Congratulations to you on your show. There's a new episode of I Was There continuing tonight, 10 Eastern on the History Channel. George?
I'm going to have to think about it, how to get you back, or at least give you a compliment for that hair compliment.
That's all right. Just being with you. Just being with you is all the compliment I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Will.
In every corner of the country, from Washington to Texas, from protests to prayer, Ukrainian Americans are coming together seeking peace. Their loved ones 6,000 miles away on their minds and in their hearts.
The last time I spoke to one of my friends was at least 5 hours ago, and she said, I don't know when I will text you next, but if anything happens, I love you.
In Cambridge, Massachusetts, more than 500 students gathered at a rally in Harvard Yard.
Harvard stands with Ukraine.
Many of my classmates as well as friends will go and fight this war, and perhaps they might die.
And in Los Angeles,
I have family in Ukraine. For the last 2 days, they've been careful. They've been hiding. The lights have been out. They're packed to go, but they're staying their ground.
solidarity in the streets a world away.
Ukraine, stay strong! Stop the war!
Hollywood also sending support at last night's SAG Awards and on Saturday Night Live. Meanwhile, governors in New Hampshire, Ohio, and Texas have ordered retailers in their states to remove Russian spirits from their shelves. Americans ready to protest via vodka. However, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States reports that less than 2% of U.S. vodka imports actually come from Russia. Not Smirnoff, nor Absolut, nor Svedka are Russian. Even Stoli is made in Latvia and owned by a company in Luxembourg. In perhaps a better boozy approach, Evil Pie Pizzeria in Las Vegas offering $5 shots of Ukrainian-made vodka, with all proceeds going to relief efforts. Many Americans also choosing to support local Ukrainian restaurants in their communities. Veselka here in New York City has had a line around the block during opening hours for almost the entire weekend, you guys.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, Will. It's not always just about sanctions, but about what you want to do as well.
How you can support, right.
Definitely. A lot of people have been coming together and even just taking to social media, donating money to the relief effort as well. In today's Tech Bites, upgrades for Samsung's Galaxy Book. The company's next-generation laptop has improved webcams and brighter screens. The Galaxy Book 2 has 3 models so far. Pre-orders start on March 18th. A 4th business model is coming later in the year. AT&T has started deploying and testing 5G small cell radios on streetlights in several cities. The company says it's a way of boosting 5G experience in dense urban environments. AT&T didn't say which cities the testing is taking place. A new concept phone on display now is so flexible it can fold inward and outward. The Ultra Flex by TCL has a 360-degree rotating hinge to bend the phone in either direction. The prototype has an 8-inch screen, and like most foldable phones, the crease is slightly visible. Those are your Tech Bites. Have a great day.
To the Index tonight, the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spilling over into the sports world, with soccer feeling the brunt. FIFA announced today that no international competitions will be played in Russia. This comes after Poland and Sweden both announced that they will not play in World Cup qualifiers against Russia. More U.S. governors have joined the call asking for their states to remove Russian products, particularly liquors, from shelves in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Today, the governors of Pennsylvania, Texas, and Utah, all following the lead of the governors from Ohio and New Hampshire. And Saturday Night Live paid tribute to Ukraine last night, opening the episode with a performance by Ukrainian chorus Dumka of New York. The chorus wore traditional clothing and sang the hymn Prayer for Ukraine. When they were finished, the camera panned to cast members behind a table of candles arranged to spell Kyiv, the country's besieged capital. To the Index tonight, the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is spilling over into the sports world, with soccer feeling the brunt. FIFA announced today that no international competitions will be played in Russia. This comes after Poland and Sweden both announced that they will not play in World Cup qualifiers against Russia. More U.S. governors have joined the call asking for their states to remove Russian products, particularly liquors, from shelves in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Today, the governors of Pennsylvania, Texas, and Utah, all following the lead of the governors from Ohio and New Hampshire. And Saturday Night Live paid tribute to Ukraine last night, opening the episode with a performance by Ukrainian chorus Dumka of New York.